Welcome to the first Photoshop tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to look at the basics of Photoshop. When you first open Photoshop, you're going to see a window that looks very similar to this. This window is going to allow us to set parameters for our graphic design. On this very top piece right here called Name, we're going to name our picture. We can always rename this later. We're going to keep the presets the same. Under the width and height, this is going to set how big our canvas is for our drawing. So for this tutorial, we're going to do 600 by 600. Now this is 600 pixels. If you click on pixels, you can select other options here, inches, centimeters. For now, we're going to save this as pixels. We're going to leave our resolution the same. We're going to make sure that our color mode is RGB color. Our background is going to set what the background starts as. We can always change that, but we're going to start with transparent so we have a clear background. Everything else is going to stay the same. It'll tell you what your starting graphic size is going to be right here. So we're going to start off with a graphic of just about 1 megabyte before we put anything on there, and we'll click OK. Now Photoshop adds these white and gray squares to a transparent background just to let you know that it's transparent, there's nothing there. When you actually save this as a JPEG or any other bitmap, any other file format, these little squares will not show up. This is just a clear background. The first thing we need to look at on this after we've got our canvas up here is our menu bar. Across here, it's going to give us options to do many things in Photoshop. Some of these are similar to Word or other pieces of software that you've used before, such as the File. And under File, you have New, Open, and we can import, export, print, and exit the actual software. If we click New, it's actually going to create a new canvas for us. We'll look at that real quick. We'll leave that all the same. When we click that, notice that we have two tabs up here. When we click our tabs, we'll go back and forth between the first and the second. So we're gonna let's draw something on here real quick just so you can see what's going on with that. So this is on the one that I just created. When I click back on our picture, it goes away because we're looking at a different canvas. We're gonna get rid of that for now. We're not gonna save it and just work with one. Now on these menus, it's going to give you the shortcut keys to get to this. So for instance, if we want to save as, if we hit Shift, Control, and S at the same time, it'll bring up the Save As window, or we can just click Save As and it'll bring up the window. Anything that has an arrow beside it, for instance, Open Recent, if we click on this, on any of these, it will expand out and give us more options. Now right down here on the status bar is going to show us what percent we have zoomed in. So right now it's 100%, it's full size. And it's also going to tell us the document size. So again, 1.03 megabytes, which is what we started with. We haven't put anything on there yet. We can come down here to this 100%. We can actually type in, say 200% and hit enter, and it's going to zoom it into 200%. Now this becomes important later on because if you're zoomed in too much, you can just simply come down here, change it back down to 100, hit enter, and it'll go back to the original size. Now over here on the left hand side, the toolbox is going to house many of the tools that you'll use for drawing, copying, changing your artwork, depending on what you're trying to do. By doing this, you just simply click on the tool that you want to use and you start using it. Any tool with a little arrow on the lower right hand corner of it, if you click and hold, it will give you other options other than what's shown on this toolbar. So just about all of these have more options to them, or it gives you the ability to change the tool itself. So for instance, if we click on this one, it goes from the dodge tool to the burn tool to the sponge tool. This little area right here allows us to choose colors. Now, this upper left hand corner, if we choose that, that will actually set it back to the default black and white. So right now we have a black and a tannish color. So if we click on that, notice it went back to, instead of that tan color, it changed it to white. In order to change this color, we'll simply click on it. It will bring up a color picker, and we can simply click on the color that we want. We can adjust this bar over here to access more colors. We click OK, and that color changes. This is our foreground color. This is our background color. If we want to change our background color, we choose our background color, select the one we want for our background color, and click OK. Now, our background color does not change this background unless we actually apply it to that background, which we'll do later. If we want to reverse those, simply click on this little arrow right here and it'll reverse those. It'll change the red to our foreground, our blue to our background. Now over here on the right hand side, we have our layers menu. In Photoshop, we can create multiple layers. And this is just like a transparency, the old school transparency in math class, where you might have the actual questions written on a transparent sheet. You put it up on the overhead, and then if you want to show the answers without rewriting all of the questions plus the answers, you simply have the answers on the top page on a transparency. You put it on top of the original, and now both of them show up. So let's look at an example of this. We're going to draw real quick just some lines. This is on our first layer, layer 1. We're going to want to name these layers when we get in the habit of that, because later on when we have 30, 40, even 100 layers, it can get quite confusing trying to find the layer that you want. So we're just going to name this blue. And we're going to create a new layer by coming down here, selecting this icon, and it put a new layer up there. It by default named it layer 1 because we don't have a layer 1 here. We're going to name this red. Now when we select this, this is the layer that we're working on. So if we want to work on the blue layer, if we want to draw more blue lines, we're working on that layer. If we want to turn that layer off, in other words, not delete it, but not be able to see it, we click on that little eyeball there. Now I want to draw a red line, so I'm going to click on the red layer. We're going to change our color, our red, to the foreground color, and we're going to draw again. Now, we can turn our red layer off by clicking on the eyeball. We're not deleting it, we're just turning it off so we can't see it. And if we want to move that red line, we simply come up here to our move tool, make sure the red layer is selected, and we can move it. We can erase part of it without erasing the blue layer, or do whatever we need to do to that particular layer. If we want to delete it, we can right click and we can delete it, delete layer, and that layer is gone, and create a new one.